slide that we saw again, it came from the eco community, that they highlighted where they were less likely to curtail the use of plastics was where they see it playing a role in keeping their food fresh. So I just wondered, kind of honing in on that area, first of all, if there were some examples from the community, Jeff, that you could share, and then to see people's perspectives on that of what can be done or what should be done in that area.
Yeah, and I think this was one area that highlighted a lot of the issues we've already talked about in terms of the barriers to making this switch. So it's an area where people recognize, and it's a very visible area that they see in their lives day to day, and they know that it is something that is not good for the planet. They need to find an alternative. And Keir touched on this earlier in terms of the alternatives have to match the functionality of what they're giving up. And you know, that was one of the key barriers here, that there was a strong feeling that the alternatives weren't as good or weren't as easy to use as the incumbent. And it's also simple things like availability. So if things are not readily available, then people are just not going to use them. And you know, it comes back to, if we're going to achieve the change we want, we have to design solutions that work for people in the reality of their lives. And I think it's really important that, you know, if brands, if retailers want to make these changes, they get closer to the lives of consumers, the realities, and work with them. And that's kind of what we're trying to do with eCommunity. It's a collaborative community that allows you to co-create solutions that incorporate some of these challenges and barriers that the consumers face in their lives.
And I know, Umberto, you had an example of a trial looking at kind of free to pick up fruit and veg versus packaged with plastics. I just wondered if you could reflect on that.
Yeah, sure. So WRAP, as I said, is working not only on plastic waste, but also on food waste. And there was a group that was working from both the side on the problem of how to reduce the packaging around fresh produce. It's actually way more complicated than one might think, and especially I think way more complicated than the consumers think. Because in terms of eliminating the plastic and reducing the shelf life, that is increasing a lot the amount of work and the amount of waste that is coming from the retailers. Sometimes there are a lot of problems with the supply chain, for example. So there are a lot of products that are not produced in the UK. There are other countries where sometimes it's difficult to find alternatives to plastics, and it's very it's a whole approach to the whole value chain they should take. But sometimes the value chain is so wide and spread all over that it's very difficult to have that organic change all at once. We've seen it also what happened in France. France was passing a very strict legislation to reduce all the plastic by, I think, 2026 or something like, I don't remember exactly the year, but something very soon. And the private sector is being not consulted enough. And now they're going back to the government to say this is not achievable. And that is the other problem. When we are promising to the consumers that something can be done, and then we hit the wall when we actually have to do it. And I think in the idea of the regulators, there was the idea that all fruit and veg would have been so loose. And the actual reality is that everybody's just switching to paper. And as Tracy said before, paper is heavier, so you're increasing the carbon footprint when you are transporting stuff. And then a lot of people now are asking for paper, so there is not availability of paper, and we're cutting trees to do the paper. So again, it's very complicated. What I see happening in the future is that there will be a small step. So anything that is easier will happen. But then we need to tell the consumers that for some products, the need for plastic is because of that functionality. So if you want the product to be still sold in your local supermarket, you need to have some plastic involved.